All right, hey, so what's up, guys? All right, so today I'm going to show you how you could make your own Bluetooth Android or iOS app so you could control your Arduino projects or your ESP32 stuff. Okay, so why do this? Well, for one thing, we don't have to depend on other people. We don't have to pay subscriptions. We could customize the app however we want. We could name it. We could use our own icons. You could make an app for your girlfriend. Okay, so what do we need? Well, so on the Arduino side, we're going to be using an ESP32. You could use a regular Arduino with a Bluetooth module, but we're going to be using an ESP32. Okay, and on the phone side, we're going to be using software called Capacitor, which uses JavaScript. So it was developed by a bunch of lazy JavaScript developers who didn't want to learn other languages. So no, I'm just kidding. Basically, they had I think the JavaScript developers had their own skill set. So why not make use of it? So basically, they created Capacitor, which was Ionic, which was Cordova before. But basically, you could write one set of code and then you could release it on iOS or Android or even the web. So it's a good deal. Okay, and if we were to start from scratch, it would take quite a while and it would take a few videos. But actually, I'm going to do what Andreas Spies often says and to basically stand on the shoulders of giants. So I got into this BLE stuff by watching this guy's tutorials, and I highly recommend them. He kind of walks you through the whole Bluetooth, the BLE library for the ESP32. So I definitely recommend watching his videos. So, and what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take his code from this video, and we're going to expand upon it to turn it into an app using Capacitor. He actually made another video where he used I think something like Xamarin or something like that to create a mobile app, and that is cool, but it uses C#, and I didn't want to learn another language, so I've used Capacitor before, and I know JavaScript, so I figured I would do that, and I would show you how to do it. But I definitely recommend you watch that guy's videos, and I think watch all of his tutorials. But if you want, you could watch this. I try to summarize things as much as possible, and then you could decide for yourself if it's something you want to pursue. All right, so let's get to it. All right, so if you guys want to follow along, we need to install some stuff first. If you want to use iOS, you need to install Xcode. And if you want Android, you're going to need to install Android Studio. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's not. I can't explain everything in this video, so I'm just going to put links or instructions in my write-up, which will be in the description. The one tricky thing is for the coding, we're going to be using VS Code. And this is sometimes not an easy install. If you are on a Mac, I think you need to install like npm first. But again, I'll put instructions in my write-up, which will be in the description. Okay, so you guys go do that and meet me back. All right, after you got Visual Studio Code installed, if you're on a Mac, we need to do one more thing, and we need to install something called CocoaPods. And this is important because we need to have this on before we try to create our Capacitor app. If you're on Windows, you don't need to do this, but this is important for Mac. So the best way to do this is, again, instructions down below, but you're going to open up a terminal window. First, we're going to install Homebrew, which lets us install all these kinds of packages. We install that first. I'm basically just copy pasting the instructions they have on the website. After that, we're going to install CocoaPods. All right, so let's go into VS Code, and we want to open up a terminal window, and you can do that here. To create a Capacitor app, we're just going to type in npm init @capacitor app. Okay, so it's going to ask you to make a name for your app. Let's just call this my app. And I'm going to save this to my desktop. And I'm going to create a folder. Let's call it, we'll just call it my app. Okay, so this ID is special for iOS and Android, and it's basically a way for Google and Apple to know which developers are making which apps. The format, it's kind of the reverse of a website and then the name of your app. So I'm going to use my website. And if you don't have a website, you could just put anything in here, just for practice anyway. But this is important if you actually want to put your app on the App Store. Okay, and it gives us instructions to go into the folder. So I'm going to copy this. I go into that folder, and then I want to install some dependencies. So basically, I just type in npm install. Okay, and then it says this npm start, but let's not do that for now. Let's open that folder. So we're actually just going to grab the folder and drop it onto VS Code. Okay, basically there's the files that the capacitor install made for us, and this is kind of a sample capacitor app, but we'll talk about that more later. First, we want to install iOS and Android support. So we do that by typing in npm install add capacitor Android and add capacitor iOS. Okay, we're going to run npm run build. And then npx cap add Android and npx cap add iOS. Okay, so that added these two folders, this Android folder and this iOS folder. So when we compile, our Android files are going to be here and our iOS files are going to be here. Okay, before we do anything else, let's install the BLE cap plugin. And to do that, we're just going to type in npm install add capacitor Bluetooth LE. And actually, I'm going to do a write-up so you can just copy-paste this stuff in. But I'm actually just getting all of this stuff from the Capacitor BLE GitHub. And they actually did a pretty good write-up for this. So it gives you all the installation instructions. Yeah, this is what we just put in. And then we're going to do npx cap sync. So basically, after you make some changes, you would type sync to update the Android and iOS folders. And another nice thing about the GitHub is it gives you special instructions. So there's like some special permissions for iOS and Android that we want to include. For example, this one with iOS is this NS Bluetooth always usage description. And okay, so we're going to add this so it doesn't crash, and then we're adding this Bluetooth Central, the UI background modes. So basically it allows it to run in the background. Otherwise, it might just cut out if you switch to another app or just leave it sitting for a while. So let's add this as well. So basically, this is giving me all the instructions I need to do to add these permissions to this info plist. So if we go back to our folder here, so this is in iOS. This will be under app, and there is an info plist here. I'm just going to copy paste what's on the website. Actually, it doesn't really copy paste here because it's got these pluses to show that you added something here. You don't want that. But in my write-up, I will have that ready for you guys, so you can just copy paste it from there. Okay, so I'm just going to copy and paste that here. Okay, and as for Android, actually we are not going to do anything. It says that we are all good to go. There is some extra code here, but I ran into some problems with this, or it was acting kind of weird for me, so I'm not going to do it. And it says we're good to go anyway, but you could read more about this. But at the end of the video, I'm going to get into some like troubleshooting stuff, so check that out. But for now, we're just going to skip this part. Okay, next we need to include this library. So first we're going to go and make our own JavaScript file. So we're going to go under JS here, and then we'll just create a file called main.js. And we need to include, I'm just copy pasting this from the website. So we're importing this BLE client. All right, so let's take a look at our app. So to do that, let's just open up a terminal, and we're going to type in npm run start. And that'll start a live server for us. So we just want to, on a Mac, it's command click, or you could just copy and paste this. But I'm going to open this. And basically, this is the Capacitor app. Well, just the sample that they give you. So basically, actually, first let's, because we're going to make an iOS Android app. So I want to view this as a mobile app. So I'm just going to press function 12. And that is going to bring up this developer page. If I on the Mac, it's, well, on Firefox, it's this. It's different for Chrome and whatever. And okay, and here you could pick which phone's screen resolution you want to emulate. So I have an iPhone 12. And yeah, this is what the app is going to look like. We're going to be using JavaScript and HTML and CSS. And if you don't know how to use JavaScript...
And what about
JavaScript?
too fast? Take the little end and stick it in the big end, and you know what? If you guys don't know how to use
JavaScript.
just ring your call button, and Tommy will come back there and hit you on the head with a tack hammer because you're a retard. Okay, and life preservers. These.
Okay, but seriously, we're all learning. So anyway, it's a little tricky. You could follow along with what I'm doing here. And if you feel like investing the time, you could check out this guy's tutorial, which is really good. I think JavaScript is actually worthwhile learning, and it's not like a dead end, so you could actually take what you learn from that, since it's like a higher level language, and you could use it for other languages pretty easily. So after learning JavaScript, I feel comfortable learning any other language. Anyway, and if in doubt, just use ChatGPT. I think lots of developers are using that now anyway. It's not perfect, but it does get the job done here and there. But it helps if you know what it's supposed to be doing. Anyway, let's get to it. All right, so if we were to install this on our phone right now, this is what it would look like. All right, so if we go into, we're going to go into our index.html file here. And if you look here, this is this actual page here. And this example capacitor app is this code right here. So if we comment this out, and on a Mac, it's Option Shift A. Oh, and then save. Okay, and then we got a blank screen. So basically everything this is live server. So if I write, I don't know, my example app, and then again save it, it's gonna pop up here. So we're gonna make it look a little cooler than that. Okay, but before we do that, while we're here, so this HTML links to this capacitor example JavaScript file. So we want to change that, and let's have it link to our main.js. Okay, so what I like to start with is just a button. So give me a button, something I could work with. Okay, so let's add a button, and I'll just set I'll set the ID to button 1. And let's call it button 1. Okay, we save this, and our button's gonna pop up there. But yeah, just like the basic HTML, it looks terrible. So I'm going to fix this up with some CSS. All right, guys, I'm going to save you from watching me write CSS. It's just going to take too much time. But if you don't know how to do CSS, then actually you could use ChatGPT. It does a pretty good job, and it helps me out if I want to do something in particular. But I'll just give you. But this is just what I did. So basically, I added a title div. We had our button in the CSS. I just set this to flex because it helps with positioning everything. I put flex direction column, so everything's going to go vertically. Yeah, and I just centered it. Yeah, so the iPhones have that little notch, so I want to get off the top. So I'm adding this margin top 15%, and then for the buttons, let's just make the font size bigger. Let's make the buttons wider, take up more space, and we're going to add a few buttons, and we don't want them bunching up on each other. So I added this margin here. And then why not add some border radius to make it to round off the buttons. So we take that, we click save, and we get this. Okay, so what can we do with this button? Let's go back to the BLE GitHub. All right, so going back into the BLE GitHub and looking at all this, it just all looks kind of intimidating because what is all this stuff? Because you look at this page and it's just like, what is going on here? And this is all JavaScript, but even for me, I was like, okay, what is all this? And coming from the tutorial where we're using our own UUIDs to kind of transmit data, they have these kind of UUIDs with these reduced values, which are kind of just set for different services. And we got this heart rate monitor here, and it's just like, this is example code, but it's just like, what am I going to do with this? I don't have a heart rate monitor. This isn't what I want to be doing at all. So this could be kind of intimidating because it's like, what's going on here? So my tip is just take one step, and I think just do one thing. And looking at the code, looking at the methods that they put up here, there was this one, which is this scan, and that's what we were doing before with the NRF app. So if we trace it down, conveniently, they actually give a example for this. So let's just plug it in and let's just see what happens. All right, so I'm just going to copy and paste this in. All right, and the nice thing about VS Code is if there's any problems with the code, it'll just highlight it here, and if you hover over it, it'll tell you what's wrong. So the problem here is this. Actually, this code is written in TypeScript, and I don't know TypeScript. I mean, I know what it is, but I haven't used it yet. I should, but basically, coming from C++, you are already writing in TypeScript. You have to declare everything, what variables are and things like that. You don't have to do that in JavaScript. So when you're messing around with this stuff and you don't know what's going on, you could just easily just throw this into ChatGPT and just say, what is this? What's going on? And that will help a lot. But basically, I just want to delete this part here. And it's not TypeScript anymore. It's just JavaScript. Okay, and we don't need this here. And looking at the explanation for the method, there's some options you could put in here, so it could filter out the results. But yeah, we don't need this, so I'm going to take it out. Okay, so let's connect that function to our button. Okay, and if you want to just test the code for your UI, you could actually do that over the live server. On JavaScript, we got a thing called console log, which is basically serial print in Arduino. One big thing to note is, yeah, this BLE library cannot work on the web server because your browser doesn't have access to your Bluetooth. So any code, anytime you try to call up any of the code for this BLE stuff, it's just going to crash. So basically, we just want to take this out. But if we want to just test our button, we can. So I'm going to comment out the scan for a second, and we'll just console log. Make sure our button is pressed properly. So after we got that, we could go in, go back to our web browser, and if you click on console here, it will. This is the serial monitor. It'll pop up anything, any serial prints, console logs that you do. So we press button 1. Yeah, it pops up. All right, so let's get this on our phone. But first, I'm going to go back here and uncomment out the scan. So we got that call going properly. All right, so we're going to start with iOS, and to build our app, we're just going to type in npm run build, and then npx cap sync, and then to open up Xcode, we are going to type in npx cap open iOS. Okay, so there's a lot to do with Xcode, but it's a bit too much to get into here. So I'm going to put a write-up again to how you could set up Xcode, or a link to a good write-up. Basically, if this is your first time using Xcode, you need to make sure you have an Apple account. You don't need the paid developer account, but with just like a free account, we can put the app on our phone, but Apple doesn't make things too easy for us, so they basically deletes after like a week or two, so you got to keep installing it. But this is just to show you how it works, and then hopefully, I don't know, there's lots of pressure on Apple to kind of open up like side loading, so hopefully that works out. Although seeing the news that they're putting out now, they're still not making it too easy, but hopefully one day. If you're on Android, you are perfectly fine. You're going to have a lot of fun. You could get it on your phone and it will stay there. But for now, for Xcode, yeah. So if you go here under settings, so after you create your account, go into settings, and then under account, go in here and then enter in your info. So then it will associate your account with Xcode. So after you have that, the first thing you want to take a look at here. So yeah, actually, when you first open this, you'll probably see nothing. But yeah, you want to click on the top left, just click App, and then you're going to see this page. And if you go over to Signing and Capabilities, you want to make sure you want to select your team. It's basically you. So I'm going to select myself here. Coming back here, just some things we could look at here. So one thing, let's say you want to build an app, and you don't want people flipping into landscape mode because it's going to mess up the formatting you have. To turn that off, you could just click on here. So I could disable landscape. So then it will force it to stay in portrait mode. Okay, then you want to make sure you have your phone selected here. Make sure it's plugged in. Okay, so to build your app, we're just going to click on this here. Okay, and so it's going to ask you if you would like to allow Bluetooth. So yes, you want to click allow. If you accidentally click don't allow, you're going to have to go back in the settings and change that. Okay, so when you first open the app, it might not let you go into it because you have to allow that app to run. So my phone is already set up for it, but if it's your first time, you want to go into Settings. You're going to go into General, and then this VPN and Device Management, and you click that, and it's going to give you an option to allow the app. Now, Xcode is going to open up this console. It's kind of like your serial monitor, so it basically shows whenever you console log or serial print stuff, it's going to pop up here. So as you remember, we did that whenever I press this button, it's going to say button pressed. So if we click on that, okay, actually, so it did all of that stuff that we were doing. So yeah, it said button pressed, and then our code ran. So basically this stuff. So it scanned, and then it gave a list of all the devices that are available. So great. Okay, so we're on to something now. All right, and if you guys are on Android, this is going to be a lot easier for you. All you have to do, well, again, we're going to type in npm run build. And then npx cap sync. And then npx cap open Android. And then, yeah, hopefully you installed Android Studio already. But if it's installed, we could enter it. So yeah, so if you're on Android, this is going to be a lot easier because you don't need to sign in with any account stuff. Basically, all you have to do is you go into, it's going to do some stuff here, but all you have to do is you go into build, which is up here, and then build bundles APKs. You build this. You'll see a status bar down here. Okay, and when it's after it's done building, then you'll see this pop up, and if you click on this locate, and you'll excuse why it's in this folder. I lost some video, so I had to redo this. But it will be under your My App, Android app build outputs, this APK, and then I think this is a debug release. So, and this is it. This is your app. So all you have to do is get this on your phone. Like you could just, I don't know how your Android works, but you could just plug in your USB and then transfer this file onto the phone, just in a folder, or you could send it by Dropbox or whatever. But get it on your phone, and then, okay, and sorry, this is my ghetto ass old Google phone. This is running Android 8 because that's how I roll. Yeah, no, I need a new phone. But anyway, so once you get it on your phone, this is just I don't know, this is like the file browser thing. So I got it on my phone, and all you have to do is, well, actually, I don't know about the new Androids, but before there was a developer setting where you had to go into settings somewhere and click, I don't know, 10 times something. Okay, the old way to do it on this phone. Again, this is Android 8, so this is really old, but just Google it. But I had to go under settings and then system, and then go to about phone, and then I had to tap, I think, build. I had to tap build number 7 times. Okay, so it already, so yeah, if I tapped it, it says, I don't need to do it. I'm already a developer. But if you didn't do this to your phone yet, yeah, you'll tap this 7 times on this version, and then it should set up developer mode, so you could sideload apps. Anyway, so back to our APK. Yeah, so just go wherever you put the file, and if you click it, It'll ask you install, yeah, so install. And we can click open. Nice, and there you go. And that will stay on your phone. So again, if you have Android, you're gonna be perfectly fine. It's only iOS users who have to jump through way a lot of hoops. Okay, and sorry guys, you know my phone is ancient, so I can't actually show you how to connect your Android device and run the console logs live. But if you want to connect your phone, you can go up here, and they have this pair devices using Wi-Fi. There might be other ways, but there's this. And this is why I can't show you how to do this, because you need a device that runs Android 11 or over. But it's got instructions. I think all you have to do is scan the QR code, and it could do the wireless debugging, so you guys could try what we just did, and hopefully it'll all work out. All right, and I know this is supposed to be a tutorial video and not watching the thought processes of a monkey trying to figure out code, but just one more thing. Because basically going back to the GitHub, looking at the example code, all of this isn't really self-evident. It looks pretty simple in retrospect, but I think the first time you're looking at it, you're still like, what is this? And the point is, well, like the developers don't have the time to do a write-up for everything, especially for beginners. But, you know, when in doubt, just plug stuff in. And looking over all the code, we come to this next part, which is this request device. And looking at that method, we get this explanation. So request a peripheral BLE device to interact with. So this will scan for available devices according to the filters and the options and show a dialog to pick a device. So let's try that. So we're going to just stick that in there. And then we have this connect. So let's try that. There is this callback. So I'm going to copy that also, but let's take this. And yeah, why not just plug stuff in here? So I'm just going to copy this. Just so I have the format. And let's call this, let's try to connect. So again, we initialize the BLE client, and we're not going to use this stuff. So let's take this out. And let's just paste this in. Let's add this callback when it disconnects. And we're just going to add that here. Again, more TypeScript stuff. So I'm going to take this out, and we'll take that out. So now we got vanilla JavaScript again. And this is, so looking at the method, it kind of explained, it was looking for, there's like options you could add in here. So in this case, it's going to look for this heart rate service, and it's going to look for this battery service. But we don't need that, so we're going to take this out, and we are going to, instead of, when we press that button 1, instead of calling scan, let's call connect. Okay, so I'm going to do this again on the iOS, but then we're going to move over to Android. But this part is the same. It's just... so again, we're going to build the app with npm run build, and then npx cap sync. Okay, and when you do this, sometimes Xcode is going to ask you, yeah, it's going to ask you, because you made changes to the to the code. And there's kind of like a Xcode side and then this the VS Code side. So we want to use we're going to say read from disk because we want the VS Code side. Okay, so let's load that up. I clicked the button, and then wow. Okay, so I was wondering how it would do this because I thought we would have to do our own UI to choose. But basically, it's scanning and it's giving us the option to connect to the different Bluetooths that are available. So that is great. So okay, we're a step closer now. So all right, so let's recap the final code that Mo Thunders got from that one video, which I'll link down below. And basically, he was using this Arduino library by Neil Colbin. It was kind of taken over by Arduino, but this was the original guy. And I'm actually going to link to a write-up that he'd made for the library, and he did a great job. He kind of went beyond what I think normal developers do, and he explained things quite, really simply. So that's a good read, and yeah, I'll link that down below. But basically, so with the sketch, yeah, so they're including the regular libraries. Just to give you an idea how this works. So basically, we are creating a BLE server, and in order to do that, we need to assign it a UUID. So you could actually get one here, and this will just randomly create a UUID that you could use. And the combinations are so immense that there's like little chance of overlap. But basically, we need this UUID to say, okay, this is our service, and we need to differentiate that from other services that are, around the area. So, so we're creating a server. And then under the server, there are these things called characteristics. And you could imagine these as kind of like channels. It's basically what we use to transmit the data back and forth. But they're called characteristics. And each characteristic has to have its own UUID, which, again, you can get from this website. And it's basically so we know, okay, we're dealing with this characteristic or we're dealing with this characteristic. Yeah. So this was the server, and in his tutorial, he actually had two ESP32s talking to each other, and one was a server and the other one was the client. And the client, you could imagine, is going to be your phone, for example. And there are kind of two ways to communicate. There's one thing called a notify, which is basically only the server does. And he had that down here. So basically, if the server has data, they would basically notify, and it will just send out. It's like, hey, I have this data. And for Mo Thunder's sketch, he put this under the characteristic 1, and basically all he did was he created a value which is incremented up, so it would go from like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and every second it just transmitted this out. So the numbers, so 5, 6, 7. So this is the notify, and the client, if it wants that data, can start listening to this characteristic. So not all. Maybe maybe some client doesn't want the data, so it would just be a waste to receive it and parse it and do all that. So it basically just doesn't listen. But if it wants to start listening, it can. And when it starts listening, so when there's a notify, it will take the data, and you can do what you want with it. So that's one way of communicating, which we call the notify. The other way of communicating is, and actually this could go both ways, but this is the main way that this is the one way the client communicates with the server. And it could do this by asking to read or write to a characteristic. And for this sketch, that was going on under this p characteristic 2. As you could see, so he set up characteristic 1 is just to notify, and for characteristic 2, he set it up for read and write. So the client, which is your phone, doesn't notify. The server is not listening for that. So the way it communicates with the server is asking to read or write on these characteristics. So what happened here, what happens in the sketch is there's this callback here, and basically when a device asks to, in this case, the callback was on when someone's trying to write. So when the device is trying to write to this characteristic, it will call up this function. And in this case, when the device wrote, in this case for Mouth Under Sketch, he was just sending a string on to p characteristic 2. And when the string got sent, it would call up this callback, and then this would handle the data. And in this case, he was sending over a string. And so here we were assigning that data to this variable here. There's some stuff here to allow the Arduino to handle that string. And then he was just serial printing it. Yeah. Okay, so there are two changes you could make to this callback. One is this on write, and then the other one is this on read. Let's say when a device asks to read the value on this characteristic, you can send it to this callback, and it will do something before it transmits that data. Maybe in future videos I could show you what I used that for. Basically, I used that to send kind of packets of data that kind of stretched over. For this code, they set for this code, and then also I think what Neil Colbin explained was that the max number of bytes you could send is 20. But actually, that's not true. You could actually send more, and that is called it's what's known as the MTU, and that is the maximum transmission unit. And actually for iOS, apparently it can go up, I think, safely around like 200, 250 bytes. So you could actually increase that to get, to transmit more bytes of data. And then for Android, I think it could go up to 500. But for what I did, I needed to send more data than 200 bytes. So I sent that over multiple packets, and I used the on read to set up the next packet. So every time it was asking to write, it would send the first packet, and then the second packet, and then the third packet. But that's what the on read does. But today we're just going to be dealing with this on write. All right, so that's loaded up. So the server should have started, and it should have been created, and it should be called ESP32. So let's see if we can pick that up. And there it is. Nice. Okay, and we can connect to it, but we're not doing anything yet. So nice. Okay, so now, again, the server was transmitting this, just this value, which is this incrementing up. So just 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And let's see if we could read that. So this is, again, going back to the code. It's going on p characteristic 1. And it's using this char1 UUID here. So let's go back to our BLE app. And again, looking at this code, so basically we're doing the scan, and then when we connect, after you pick the BLE device you want to connect to, it's going to go into this device.device.id. And this is not the service UUID. This is just another code that your phone uses to assign to this BLE device. So first we want to save this, because we're going to need this when we're trying to, for our other functions, so they know who they're communicating with. So again, so we're going to create, let's create a variable which will hold this information, and we're just going to call that device object, because this device here, it's basically an object. It has all this information. It's got the device ID, It's got info on characteristics, the services available, and things like that. But we're going to save it here. Okay, so basically that that device we choose, we're going to save it to this object. So we'll just say device. Okay, and going back to actually, so first we want to let's make another button, which will say yes, I want to listen. So I'm just gonna copy this, and I don't know, let's call it button 2, and we're gonna say I don't know, let's say start listening. Yeah, let's say start listen. Going back to our live server, again, this is our app here. And so we created the button, and if we just save, it should pop up here. Nice. Okay, so we're going to do the start listen, but let's create a space where we can display the value that we're getting. So I'm going to put it in the middle, and again, we're just going to create a div here. We'll call it char1 display. And do that. Okay, we'll just make another line. We'll give it an ID. We'll just say char1. Again, we're making this bare bones here. Again, I hit save, and then you should see. Okay, we got char1 here. Okay, so we have that set up. So let's go back into our JavaScript, and we're gonna create. Let's create a function called. Let's just call it start listen. So we don't have to initialize. We're already connected. Basically, we are. We're going to call that. We're going to call that start notifications method. And this await. So basically, we're doing an async function, and it's basically do this first before you. So this await is do this first before you start doing what follows after, because this is all done asynchronously. So it's not in order like on the Arduino. So we're going to. We need this. We need the device ID. So we're just going to device object. Device ID. So that's the first argument we want, and then the second argument is this service UUID. And then the third argument is this characteristic 1 UUID. Oh, sorry. We want to. Okay, we need these in quotations because it's a string. Let's add these here. Okay, and then the fourth. It's basically what this function is returning. So it's going to return something called value. And when we get that value, we want to do this stuff. So in this case, first I'm going to just console log. Let's say chart data received. And let's take a look. We'll take a look at what the data is we're getting. And so it's basically sending In this case, he used unsigned integer 32. Okay, and then we want to take that value, or we want to take those bytes, and then we want to turn it into that unsigned integer that it was being transmitted as. So for that, we're going to use value dot 32, and then we're going to start on the first byte, which is we're going to start on the first byte, which is 0. And in this case, so it's a unsigned integer 32, so that is 4 bytes. But basically, we just have to tell it where to start, and it's going to start on the first byte, which is 0, and it's going to go 0, 1, 2, 3, and then it's going to give us the value. And then to take that value and then put it into our app, to put it here, we are just going to, oh, actually, so first let's assign a variable to this ID here. So, okay, so we'll just create a variable for that ID. So we'll just call it char1 value. Okay, so we're going to take this char1 value dot inner HTML, and we're going to take this value, but this is giving us the unsigned integer, but we want to make it a string so it can be displayed on the HTML. And let's link our button too. So actually, I'm just going to copy this. And we want to do start listen. Yeah, we don't need that anymore. Okay, let's build this. Okay, we'll load that up. Again, connect. And now if we click start listen, hopefully the values will show up. Nice. Oops. Okay, whoops. Okay, so we're getting some weird numbers here. So what's happening is if we go back to our code, this getUint32 method is actually it takes a second optional parameter argument, and it defaults to big Endian, which means it's basically there's two types of ways to transmit data. There's big Endian and little Endian. Big Endian just stands for the most significant byte first. So it's just the order that they're being transmitted. And then little Endian would be the least significant byte first. So it defaults to big Endian. So and the ESP32 is transmitting in little Endian. So we just need to add an extra argument here, and we will set it to true. Okay, so let's connect again, and then hopefully now we click this and it'll be an actual regular number that we want. Awesome. Okay, there you go. Okay, so we got that going. So now we are getting data from the ESP32. How about sending data over to the ESP32 from the phone? Okay, so how about we make a slider and we send over the values of that slider over to the ESP. Okay, so first let's make another button. We'll call this send data. And actually, while we're here, let's rename button 1 to connect. Save that, and you can see it here. Let's make a slider. And we'll make a div to display the value of the slider. Hit save, and you can see it here. Okay, so let's add code to connect to those DOM elements and to show the value on the HTML. Okay, so let's not use an arrow function for this, so we get the proper this value. Okay, hit save, and when we move this slider, the value should be showing up here. Okay, nice. Okay, and to send it over, we're going to be using this method called write. So let's create that function. Okay, so to send over our data, we're going to create something called an array buffer, which is you could pretty much it's pretty much an array which contains the bytes that we're going to send. And for here, we're going to create an array buffer with a buffer size of 20, so 20 elements. But we can't deal with this array buffer directly, so what we have to do is we have to create a data view of this array buffer. Okay, and with this data view, we could put our data at specific indexes. So here, actually, we're gonna send over an unsigned integer 8, and I'm gonna put it on the 0 index, which would be the first index, and I will pass the value. Okay, and then we're gonna call this write method. We're gonna pass the device ID to it, the service UUID, and then the characteristic UUID. And then the data view. And actually one more thing, reading the slider value, this might be a string, so I want to make sure that I'm getting an integer. So I'm going to add some code here. Okay, and let's call up that write data function every time that slider changes. And you know what? Actually, we're not going to use that button right now, so we're just going to use the slider as it is. So every time we change the value, it's going to get sent over. So let's install this. And you should know how to do that by now. All right, going back to the Arduino side, we could see, yeah, this is set up to handle strings that were being sent over before, but let's delete this, and we are going to set this up to handle the buffer array that we're sending. Okay, so first we'll take the data and put it into a variable. Okay, and on the phone side, we sent the data on the first index, so we could just pull it out of the array buffer right on the first index. And let's console log that. All right, so let's load that up. Okay, let's connect to our ESP32. Okay, so that is working, and then how about, okay, awesome. Okay, so as we change the slider, you can see it's getting sent over to the ESP32. Awesome, nice. So what can you do with this? You can use it, you could use these as commands. Basically, one thing this ESP32, actually, if you guys are shopping for ESP32s now, I think you should go with S3s. It's just the updated model. You got USB-C. You could connect USB peripherals to it. One nice thing about this board is it has a RGB light to it. So let's try controlling that. Okay, so I'm just going to add this little if statement here. So basically, whenever we send over a 1, it's going to turn the light on. And then I'll just put an else. So if we send anything else, it'll turn off. Just as an example. So for this board, I'm using the RGB built-in, but it might be different for your board, or just use your own LED. Okay, so let's load that up. Okay, so let's connect. I think it's connected. Okay, so every time if I send it a 1, it should light up. Nice. And then if I send it anything else, it should turn off. Excellent. Okay, so that's just one way you could control stuff. All right, so let's level you guys up a bit. So how about, since we got an RGB here, how about sending 3 pieces of data over that array buffer? It'll be 4, including the on-off toggle. So yeah, let's do that. Now we could make 3 sliders to control each of those, but if you go to the Adafruit app, they actually have this RGB picker. So let's do one of those. And what's great about JavaScript is there are a lot of developers out there who are contributing and adding their own stuff. So I found this nice library here for this RGB picker. So let's install that. So on the website, we'll just download the code here and we'll right click and save. And it's coming out as a text file, so I'm just going to add the .js to it. So we'll save that. Then we'll just take that file and stick it in our JavaScript folder, which is under source and then JS. Okay, and in our HTML file, we will include that iro.js file. And we will include this DOM element for the color picker. And I just added this code so we could display the RGB values that we're getting. Oh, and let's change the name of button 3 to, we'll just put RGB on off. All right, sorry guys, my recording got lost, but basically this is what I did with the main.js. So following those instructions from the IRO color picker from the website, we need to include this to link to that HTML element we made, and this basically creates the color picker. I added just some variables to link to those DOM elements so we could show what the R value is, what the G value is, what the B value is. And then this is the example code that they had on the website, but I added my own stuff here, and that'll look like this. So when you move this, the picker around, it will return this color. And for the color, there is a R component, a G component, and a B component, and you could pick it out using this. So example color.rgb.r to get the R value. So so when I move this around, it's going to return those values, and then first I'm just console logging the values here, and then I'm actually taking those values and assigning them to some variables which I created here. And actually, so yeah, I created 4 variables. One is just on-off for the LED toggle, and then one for the R value, the G value, and the B value. And I think, as you'll know with RGB values, they go from 0 to 255, so that is a perfect 1 byte. You can send more than you can send larger numbers, but we'll save that for another video maybe. Right now we'll just keep it simple. Yeah, so I made these variables, and then when we move this around, we will assign those values to the variables. And then here I'm using this to show, to actually display the RGB values on the HTML on the website. So example, if I start moving this around, you can see the numbers changing there. Okay. So after we get those values, we send them over to our function here. So this is the same write data function we had before, but I changed it a bit. So instead of taking that 1 argument from the slider, we're now passing 4 arguments. So I get kind of lazy with, maybe the on and off should be separate from the RGB, but we're just going to send them all at once. Oh, by the way, I set up button 3 so that when we press it, yeah, it'll toggle on and off. And basically we're piggybacking off that other function for the RGB, and we are just sending it again. So this is kind of lazy. That's why I have these global variables here. So we're basically assigning whatever we're reading from the on, off, and the color picker to global variables, and then we're sending them all together with either the RGB on-off toggle or the color picker change. Again, lazy, but that'll just work for now. Oh, actually, let's just so we always have data here, let's just define these values with some default values. So it'll change, but if we try to call this and then these are undefined, then we might run into problems. We'll probably run into problems, so might as well define them here. So okay, so going into this write data function, I think the first line, this is the same, and I think the first line, instead of that value we were sending from the slider, we just change that to LED toggle. So we're setting that to the 0 index, and then we're writing to the first, the second, and then the third index. So that would be our. So we put the R value in the 1 index, the G value in the 2 index, and the B value in the 3 index. And then the rest is the same. So it'll send this off. Okay, back in our Arduino code, and we'll go back to this callback, and we already had that first byte set up, so we're going to use that to toggle on and off, and then we just have to add. We have to take the R value and the G value and the B value. And I could just make this easier by using the int that you guys are probably familiar with, but you should get used to writing these unsigned integer 8. And again, we could just pull the values out of the specific indexes. Okay, I'm just going to console log the values we receive. And on this board, we write to the RGB with a NeoPixel write. Okay, whoops, I made a mistake there. This should be serial.printf. Okay, so let's load that up. All right, but before loading that up, let's just do one last thing, and which is the best part about making your own app, and it's basically customizing it. So what I don't like about the other solutions that they got out there is basically you're just using somebody else's app. But here you could do you could name your app whatever you want, and you could have your own icons, which is awesome. So let me show you how to do that. So actually, if you go over here, this is a button so you could get extensions for VS Code, and I already installed the Ionic Capacitor extension here. I think if you just search like Capacitor app, it should show up as this Ionic. Yeah, it should show up as here, and you could just install it, and after installing, it'll create a little icon here, which will get you into the extension. So I highly recommend this because this is an easy way to upgrade to update any plugins you're using. So here, just clicking on this, we can. I don't think there's any available. So yeah, this is already updated, but you can check if any of the plugins need updates. You can just find them here. But the one great thing about this extension, which you can do it without the extension, but I don't know how to do that. It's a little bit more involved, but this is the easy way. So, okay, if you go into configuration and this splash screen and icon. Okay, I just took mine out so I could walk you through this, but yeah, so it's under splash screen and icon, and if you just click it, it gives you the resolution that the file should be in. So I am going to use my I'm going to use my icon, and this is annoying. I don't want to do a splash screen, but you need to. It needs a splash screen as well, which is you need a larger file size. But okay, I'm going to put that in there, and then a dark mode. Yeah, you should use a dark mode icon, but for now I'm just going to put that in there. Okay, so yeah, all you have to do is point to the files and then it will create them, and it will put them in this resources folder, and you can see your icon and your splash screen and things like that. So that will give us our icon, and let's change the name of our app. So okay, so for both Android and iOS, first we're going to go to this file called capacitor config.json. And if you're doing TypeScript, it could be TX, but I'm just on regular JavaScript, so I got that. Under app name, we'll change our name here, and I don't know. Well, let's just call this RGB controller. You could call it whatever you want. You could call it John is awesome or Mary is great. That's the best thing about all this. Okay, so we're just changing the app name. We're not changing the app ID because if you change this, you need to, and again, this is just what, so this is what Apple or Google use to define your app. But if we change it here, we have to dig through some code and find all the instances that ask for this app ID. That's why it's important to name your ID correctly, although you can change it. It's just, it's a bit of a hassle to find every place where you need to change this app ID. So right now we're just going to change the name. So I'm going to call it, again, just RGB controller. So that we need for both Android and Mac and iOS. To switch to some specific stuff, so for iOS, okay, so I'm going to go into Xcode. And okay, so it's nice we have, at least our icon is showing up, but we want to change the name. And to do that, again, we'll go into the app here. And then if you look here, you're going to see this thing called targets. So all you have to do is double click this. And again, I'm just going to call this RGB controller, very, very generic. But okay, so we got that. And if you go into info here, if you're going to find a line that says, okay, this bundle display name. So we're going to change that, and we're also going to put RGB controller. Okay, nice. So we save that, or just press enter, and then we are finished here. We go back into VS Code. You're going to go into, we're going to go to iOS app. There's this file called pod file. So you click on that, and under target here, we need to add, we're going to take out that app. We're just going to rename it to what we wanted to call our app. So, and yeah, you got to make sure that all of these match wherever you're changing. So we got RGB controller there. And then, okay, we save this, and then there is one other place. Oh, actually going back into the capacitor config JSON, we need to add another property here. I'm going to put a comma, and we need to add this line here, this scheme, and again, you just put the name of your app here. Okay, there you go. So we save that. Okay, and that should be it for the iOS side. And then for Android, we just need to change one more thing. It's under Android, App, Source, Main, Res. And if you scroll down, you'll see, you'll find this thing called Values, and then strings.xml. And what we want to do is change the app name here. And I'm not sure about this title activity main, but I changed this as well. So and it worked, but I'm not quite sure about this, but I'm going to change this as well. Okay, and that is it for Android. If you have problems with this, go to the troubleshooting section, which is going to be at the end of this video, where I talk about stuff where you run into problems. But, okay, so that should be fine. Okay, so again, you could just do the npm run build, npm run sync, and then create your apps and then put them on your phone, like how we showed. All right, so let's do the final test. So I'm switching back to the ghetto Android to show a little Android love. I know all this was in iOS, so sorry about that. When I get a new phone, I could do more Android stuff. Anyway, so again, we got our APK in one of our folders. So I'm just going to click on it and install. We'll open. Okay, and I didn't really set the splash graphic up properly, so that didn't look so well, but nice. And actually, if we go, that icon's a little strange, but at least the name is right. We could fix the icon later, but nice. All right, so let's connect. Okay, and as you could remember, we set this button to toggle the LED on and off, so let's see if that works. Nice. Okay, and then as we move this around, we should be able to see the colors change. Okay, nice. And then you could see it on the serial monitor. You could see the numbers changing. It seems like it's polling a bit, so the colors are changing slowly. I think it's, yeah, it is sending all of that data for like, so we could have set like a debounce or something. So it's just not continually sending all that data. But as you could see, we could move it and the color is changing. So awesome. All right, so there you go. So we're sent four pieces of data through our little characteristic packet. So yeah, lots of stuff you could do with this. Maybe if you guys are interested, I could post some other videos to take things up to another level. But yeah, if you want, just send a message, leave a comment down below and ask for that. But yeah, these videos are taking me forever. It took me about a week, almost full time, to make this one. So I'm actually not gonna, I hate asking and I'm not gonna ask, but I'm trying to get one last push to 1,000 subs. So if you did like this video and you found it useful, like, please sub and leave a comment and like, and I promise after I hit 1,000 subs, I'm never gonna ask again. Alrighty. Alright guys, now for the troubleshooting section, and I don't think you're gonna like this one. But I started prepping for this video like a couple months ago, and I ran into some problems when I was getting the app on my phone, and I was going to show you, I was going to give you instructions on how to do that. And then I started recording a couple weeks ago, and then that was no longer an issue. So the moral of the story is, putting this together, I ran into so many issues, and I shared the ones that were kind of relevant to you guys in the video. But the ones that are specific to me, like, I just left those out. But if you take this one, for example, so actually, if you look at the instructions on how to change a name, how to change the name of the app for iOS, you'll find this write-up in the Capacitor documentation. And I used this before, and it worked great. And then all of a sudden, it didn't work anymore. So what was going on? So ends up, I don't know if... Yeah, probably Apple changed something on their end, so these instructions are not relevant anymore. These instructions are not perfect anymore. But I Googled and I came across the change that we had to do here. Is basically we had to change the name under this bundle ID. The moral of the story is the deeper I get into programming, the more I realize that nobody knows what the hell they're doing. And it's not to say that, you know, everyone's an idiot, but actually everyone's just doing their best. And the best is pretty great, but nothing is perfect. So issues do come up. I mean, that's why we have updates, and that's why we have pull requests, and that's why we, you know, we continue to higher versions of software. So I can't help you with every issue you're going to run into, but what do I do when I run into an issue? Well, so what I do is I go to my friend who has like 25 years of programming and embedded systems experience, and he's my mentor. So actually, he's a great resource. So yeah, if I have issues, I talk to him. Okay, no, just kidding. Okay, I don't have a mentor. I wish I did. I got Google, and sometimes that's all you could do. You got to Google stuff. It would be great if you had resources like that and someone you could talk to. But if you have an issue, I think the best thing is to just Google it. And I can't. It's impossible for me to know every issue that's going to come up from now when this video. When this video is up to whenever, like new things are, the software just keeps developing, keeps changing. So I'm not going to know everything. So yeah, I just recommend you just Google stuff. And if there's something you really can't figure out, you can ask it. You can ask down in the comments. But there's no guarantee that I would know it, and I think that's fair. Again, everybody's just doing their best on this. So, yeah. All right. So, yeah, guys, that's it. So, happy coding, happy making, and I'll see you next time.